Go ahead.
All right, welcome everybody. I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to order, virtual meeting, August 25th, 2020 of the Historic Zoning Commission. First item tonight is the approval of the agenda. And I understand that we may have some changes to the order of things. Matt, is that correct or?
Yeah, so if we can, let's just switch under new business item 1 and 2.
Okay.
And then we should be good.
Do we need to make a motion for that?
Just as part of the approval of the agenda.
All right. Well, understanding that we will be switching under item 5, new business 5.1 and 5.2, switching places for those. Therefore, we'll start with the gold cross tattoo discussion. Understanding that, let's have a quick roll call on the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against? Wonderful. The agenda passes. Moving on to item 3, approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. Should have all those minutes in front of you from our last meeting, which took place on the 28th of July. Do we have any notes or comments, concerns, changes to the minutes? Not hearing any. Wonderful. So we have a move for approval.
I'll second it.
Wonderful. Just do a simple roll call vote here. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Wonderful. And just for my own edification, who are we missing from this evening? Are we missing anyone? Any commissioners?
Commissioner Biasca. So
Okay.
she's not coming.
She's not coming.
Okay, and
Okay.
I also don't see Commissioner Toole. Did I miss her?
She may be late.
Okay, that's
Okay.
fine. That's fine.
Okay.
And I'd like to say real quick, Chairman, that
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to thank Matt for helping me out last month. I think he did a wonderful job. It scares me with my job security, but but I would like all of you. Thank you so much. With the minutes, I hope I did okay, but Matt, he did a great job.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, we're glad to have you back. You were missed.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, wonderful. Well, then moving on to old business. Matt, I'll let you take it away here.
Thank you. So I'm going to move through this quickly because we have a long agenda.
Yes.
No update on blight and beautification. The design committee for JCDA continues to work on the details of the Breezeway project. There's some movement where that committee will be getting shifted around as part of a broader reorganization with JCDA. And I'll just provide an update on that. More to come later meetings as those details on that reorganization are finalized. And then the design review committee met early this month.
Can I just interject about the mural, the wagon wheel, that they're going to have like a committee to get some input? Is that right about that?
Yeah, so the theme of one of the murals in the Breezeway was kind of decided upon in a silo somewhat. And so the committee kind of intervened and said, hey, we've been working together on this entire project, and this specific theme for wagon wheel was not discussed as the committee. It wasn't presented to the historic zoning. But now we've put it out publicly that that's what we're doing. We need to kind of get more public input on that. So a subcommittee has been formed to review any submissions for the wagon wheel themed mural. And I would just say hold tight on that, and I'll I'll bring more pertinent details to the commission as needed. No need for y'all to dive into those details at this point.
Wonderful.
Design Review Committee met early this month on one of the items that was deferred last month, and that we'll hear on later this evening. Notice I say evening, not afternoon. So here's just an updated rendering of the breezeway. This is just kind of just ongoing updates for y'all. This shows a little more of the artwork and planters, and just has more detail. So that this was utilized to attain about $24,000 plus in TIF funds that'll be going towards funding this project. And so that design committee, on the things that are clearly known and decided on, is out ordering the furniture, ordering different elements of this to start the installation, really trying to get it done this fall. So very exciting. That's moving forward, and the funding is coming in place. And I'll continue to update you on the progress. During this month, I approved the replacement of a 6-foot tall fence, just a portion of a fence at the corner of Boyd and Maple. Just a staff approved item. And then another one with a shingle replacement on this roof, as well as some siding along the sides of the dormers. There will be more on this property to come as they continue to do renovations and kind of think about how to approach this property it's had a non-contributing addition of the carport, and so they're looking into that. Okay, so updates from around town. I've kind of split this into downtown and tree streets. Downtown, the main thing I want to focus on that's different is that they've actually started digging the foundation and pouring the footers at 104 Tipton Street. And so that's exciting that brand new construction is moving forward. And then there isn't a whole lot of other ones. I'll be looking at Flashback Heat. Their temporary sign should be running out of time. And so they need to be looking at installing their permanent signage. And then I'll continue to update on the Breezeway project. Some of these other ones, I didn't like they're gonna happen. The 236 East Main Street, those folks are moving their real estate office out of downtown, so they're not going to end up painting the green. I'm not sure about 217 East Main Street. I haven't heard any more about that temporary interactive art that didn't seem to get off the ground. And still wait. I met with Ernest Campbell on 107 Buffalo Street. Very excited about their restoration of the transom windows above the 1888 storefront. And so that continues to move forward. It's been slow, but it's going to be a good project. In the tree streets, not a whole lot of new stuff. I did not get a chance to go by. I think I went, well, I'm not sure I went by 709 West Pine Street. I'm not sure if they've begun, but their permit was finally approved after some zoning code changes. Then at 700 West Locust Street, I did not get by there either to see if they'd started on their detached garage. And I need to add the Widow's Walk actually to that item. And maybe a couple other things. I'll do better next month. This was a busy agenda. So there might be a couple items that we approved last meeting that did not get added to this list, but I'll make sure they're added next time. Okay. Upcoming initiatives. I'm just a quick highlight here with Roosevelt Memorial Park, the old high school football stadium. Email came in with some new information on that and some new kind of efforts. And Charlie Stahl has said that he would kind of take a stab at putting some of that information together for a memorial marker or a historic marker. At this time, there's no more staff time to be able to kind of draft the language for those. And so that's really kind of sitting there until, either someone volunteers to try and draft language or, as we have time to write grants and accomplish some of these other things. But we'll just have to find time to make those priorities. One thing I'll add to this, another upcoming initiative for the Historic Zoning Commission is the planning department is going through the 2020 comp plan that was written in 2005, 15-year plan. Its horizon is at the end of this year. Instead of doing a full-scale comp plan to replace it, with using the 2010 census data, we are waiting until the 2020 census data is available so that we can use good, fresh data as the foundation to analyze before we go out and engage the public and come up with recommendations for how to, what our goals are for the next 10, 15 years. So instead of trying to do a rewrite now, we are basically reviewing our current comp plan and all 8 elements that are part of it and proposing to do an extension, a 5-year readoption of the comp plan. And so we have planning commissioners have a committee that's doing a lot of the review on that, and we're working with other departments. Historic zoning has a role in that with the historic preservation element of the comp plan. And so I'll be engaging the commission and probably a subset of the commission to assist in that review and make sure that it's still relevant, up to date, that we identify items that have been accomplished, and that we make sure that anything that still needs to be implemented remains in that element. And so more information on that to come, but be on the lookout of that. We're gonna have a big push through September to get a draft in place so that we can go out to the public and ask people to review our draft of these elements. So that's something. And so once that bridge, we're calling that the bridge plan. Once that bridge plan is done, then staff time may free up a little bit to try and accomplish some of these other items. So moving on into new business, just want to go ahead. We had decided to hold off on this one. I just want to check if Luther Ward has joined. Not on the call.
I have someone on the. I have someone on the phone. Hang on just a moment.
That may be him.
Caller, can you identify yourself?
Hello, this is Luther.
Okay.
Luther Ward.
Okay. All right. Luther Ward is on the phone. I'm going to ask that we go back to our original
Agenda.
And go ahead and get this resident project reviewed.
We need to make a motion for that.
Yeah, if you can. Just a motion to go with the original agenda.
Motion to
go restore the original agenda.
second.
We have a motion and a second. Any against? All right, the ayes have it.
Okay. 1103 Southwest Avenue. This is for the installation of a pool, an in-ground pool, 20 by 40 with a 6-foot wide concrete pool deck around the perimeter of the pool. And then around the perimeter of the yard would be a privacy fence, 4 feet in the sections that are visible that front and face the street. And then 6 feet tall in other places. It would be wooden fence, picket. The contractor is Isaac Pools, and the applicant, Luther Ward, is on the phone. Just went out there just to show you, give you some idea of what the visual is on this. This is the front of the house. You can see to the right of the house is a little gap in the hedges, but you've got, really large mature vegetation that screens this area. But if you look through there, you'll see the area where the pool is going to go. And the site plan to the right shows you as well the general layout. Again, if you're on the sidewalk, walking down Southwest Avenue, the area of the pool is going to be off kind of behind that vegetation. It's a double frontage lot. So on Cedar Place, where the orange fence is, that's where the 4-foot tall section will be. and the pool will be just inside that, at, between detached garage and the house. Then further up Cedar Place, there's an opening there. They've got a project going on to bury the power lines that cut through there, so they're not dangling above the swimming pool. And so that opening, there'll be a privacy fence, and there's potential for more vegetation to go there since that power line is being removed. The overall impact, it's in line with the design guidelines. There's very limited visibility. So I think, we're looking at a situation that is going to have, it's not going to have any kind of negative impact on the character of the district overall. I think they've made accommodations to make sure that the height is lowered, make sure there's still opportunities for interfacing with neighbors and not just walling themselves off completely. So staff recommends approval.
I've got a question. Since Cedar Place is not an alley, it's an actual street. Normally we would say everywhere there you have to stay at 4 feet because or in this case, are we just counting southwest as being the front of the house and that requires the 4 feet and then the rest can be 6?
Yeah, so technically, if this was like a zoning issue, we would say it's a double frontage. And
right.
If we had a zoning code for fence height, then yes, we would probably make it be 4 feet. Since it's a design guideline and it's meant to, it doesn't have that same level of authority or of legal status or law, then we can use some discretion. And so in this case, with the house fronting southwest and everything essentially operating with more activity on southwest and just the orientation of their the garage, the detached garage entering from the back, just like as you would on an alley, it does make sense for it to be considered the back or the rear yard. Also, with just the way it's been, the mature growth and vegetation along the rear, I don't think you're looking at a huge impact. There's very limited visibility to the backyard. If this was cutting off a visual connection that was somehow important. I see the intent of the height as being something that's part of the overall design, where we have front porches, we have sidewalks, we have short setbacks. All those things are combined into creating an environment that's conducive to social interaction and the building of community. And so that's why we want to, not allow 6 foot tall fences to cut into that character. And so in this case, I don't feel like that is being lost just due to the set of circumstances here, with it being double frontage, but oriented towards southwest, and then all the mature vegetation that lines Cedar Place.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I would agree, because it seems like Cedar Place is a dual-sided street, somewhat unique to the tree streets, where one side is the front lawn and the other side is the rear of the houses.
Right.
So I don't necessarily object. I just wanted to just clarify so that way I understood how we're getting to that.
Yeah. And then, with that said, there is the stretch here where the driveway comes in would be 4 feet, because that's where, the greatest chance, the most interface between the public realm and private realm is right there. And so they are actually accommodating with that 4 foot fence and gate right there.
Okay. I was thinking it might actually look better, not to muddy the waters, but I think it might actually look better to return the 6 foot fence back to where it then takes another dive to the right to link up with the garage. I think it's just having that difference in height on the corner, and specifically on an outside corner, might feel a little bit weird.
You think it should go 4 foot around the corner or 6 foot around the corner?
I think it should be, I guess, on your diagram showing the fence along Cedar Place, and then it dives to the left to head to the northwest. That section looks like it's maybe about 10 feet long. I was thinking that might want to be 6 feet, just so that way it feels more complete. It almost seems like an afterthought to have a lower section for just that little bit. Where it returns back to the corner of the garage, that makes more sense because theoretically you would have a gate there that would be a smaller scale anyway. So I just, again, I'm not necessarily objecting. I'm just thinking it might present itself to that corner of Cedar Place and Boyd a little bit better if it completed that corner.
Definitely up for discussion. I think the idea I had was that if you bring the 6 foot down all the way, you're really just cutting off that entire backyard. But it is a backyard, so
yep.
So yeah, I was kind of looking at it as a compromise. But yeah, so we can hear from the applicant and see if there's any other comments, and then are there any other questions for staff? Okay.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
We're gonna open up the public hearing real quick.
Yeah, are we ready to do that? Sounds like it. Okay, yeah, we'll go ahead and enter the public hearing at this time. Just please state your name and your address if you'd like to speak. And if you are calling in or interested in zooming in, the screen here, which is being projected live on the internet, is how you can get in touch. Do we have anyone that would wish to speak at this time?
And this is Luther Ward. I'm the applicant. Can I speak or?
Yes, absolutely. Hi, Luther.
Yeah. Hey, how you guys doing?
We're good, man.
Hey, so yeah, the idea about the 6 foot, a lot of that fence on the Cedar Place Boyd side that was designated 4 foot fence, a lot of that actually will be a gate, because we're going to have a gate that you can actually drive in and then another gate to walk through. So yeah, I don't know how that influences design, but kind of the height and everything, there will be a gate there because we want to have some sort of drive-in access to our backyard if we ever need to drive in there to move stuff or do stuff or whatever.
Do you have any preference on if it's a 6 foot tall gate or a 4 foot tall gate?
I don't know. I haven't done that far ahead. I think the 4 foot up front is good for us. It makes a lot of sense. And then, yeah, I don't know. We're just either way. I think continuity would look better if it's kind of 6 foot because the backside, the Cedar Place is 6 foot, but it does shut down, like you said, the vision from that corner. So I don't know. We could do either one. I'm not sold on one way or the other.
Okay. Any other comments about the project that you want to convey to the commission?
I don't think so unless they have questions.
Okay.
And you outlined everything pretty good.
Any
Wonderful.
questions for the applicant?
Yeah, thanks, Luther.
Yeah.
Jay, do you have any questions or do you?
I think it looks like, I mean, overall, I think this is a good project. I think do we need to talk about the pool itself? Or are we, in this case, are we considering that the pool is in the ground plane and therefore not really visible from the street?
I have not gone that far as to say that it's like outside of our judgment or jurisdiction, because it still, very much would be potentially visible with the ladders and, depending on your elevation and that kind of thing. But I definitely think that's a factor that it's in the ground. But yeah, you're welcome to make comments on the swimming pool, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, Luther, I have a couple questions for you.
Yeah.
The first is that I think the area where you're planning to put the pool is not exactly level. but it seems to slope a little bit toward your house and toward southwest. So I was just
Yes.
wondering if you had any plans for how you were going to deal with that slope. Were you going to dig in on the high side, or were you going to raise it up on the low side, or some combination?
So I think Isaac was talking about possibly having to raise up on the low side, like 12 inches is what he thought. But he also said he thought he could do it so gradual that you wouldn't really notice.
Okay. So he would regrade to accomplish
He would,
that?
yeah, he's going to regrade that whole grass area.
Okay.
So he thought he could make it so you wouldn't even notice. He didn't think he needed a retaining wall or anything like that.
Okay. And how are you
so-
planning to handle your pumps and filters and all the support equipment?
So the support equipment will be on the back side of the garage,
Okay.
and we have electricity line and water line already there. That's been there for a long time. So it'll all be hidden behind the garage, and then we'll probably build a privacy wall or something so that you don't see it from the yard and you don't notice it.
Right. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Luther. Commissioners,
Yeah.
do you have any further questions for the applicant? Okay,
No.
yeah, go ahead, Jay. No.
Well, I was looking at the layout plan, and
Yeah,
I was looking at and I can kind of get a sense. I see that everything is labeled, but it doesn't appear to be to scale, and so I was just having a little bit of trouble overlaying the two. And I think Matt did a pretty good job with his diagrams, but again, it's
Yeah.
just kind of a guess.
Yeah, mine is not
Yeah.
to scale.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah, I think that would be a
Andy,
very
can you
big
put
pool.
up-
It's
can
almost
you
as
put
big as
my
the house.
screen back up? Or do I need to?
So I guess one thing I didn't see, maybe I'm just not, no. There, like for instance, the property bounds are not delineated on the site plan. So that way we really, and neither is
Right.
the size of the house itself or the garage. So it's really difficult to really judge the scale or the proper location of this without seeing a true site plan.
Yeah, so a site plan is not required for the building permit for this. A site plan is required, but it doesn't have to be to scale. You don't have to have an
Right.
engineer involved. And
Right,
so,
essentially this. This is what's required.
yeah, what we were given.
Right, okay.
It shows the setbacks basically, and it doesn't even show them in scale. It's really, it shows it in numbers,
Mhm.
50 feet, 30 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet. As long as it's over 7.5 feet, that's pretty much all zoning cares about. So when it comes to historic, then I've got to try and add, some other visuals to help you guys out. And so, but I think this, that may be a little small, but I think it's pretty close. What is it that you're concerned about primarily?
Mostly sight lines that if, as you mentioned that, ladders and things like that, that if you're walking down Southwest, you could see the pool, regardless of the vegetation. One day the vegetation might die or be replaced. So, that corner becomes much more visible. And I
That
just
corner's
wanted
going to have a 6-foot tall fence in front of it.
Well, a 4 foot, because you're looking at the front.
If you're on this side, it's going to have 4 foot.
Yeah.
And so like you mentioned, the grade, that house is sitting up. So you add, another foot on top of that, yes, and then as you go along, you're still, with 4 feet on top of that ridge, you're not seeing into that pool from Southwest.
Yeah, I think you're right.
With fence or with or without vegetation.
Right.
Are y'all seeing my screen still?
I'm seeing you.
You're seeing my face? I'm
Yep.
so sorry.
so yes.
You
pretty much the
imagine my
worst.
disappointment.
Oh, here we go.
There we go.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to go ahead and close the public hearing at this time unless we have any further questions for the applicant.
This is the ridge I was kind of talking about right here. That the fence will be on top of that.
All right. Well, I think my biggest question, I hear what you guys are saying, but my biggest question is just the height of the fence and what we think is appropriate. If it's a 4-foot fence, is it going to have, I see the illustration here of the slats put close together. Is that the model for both the 6-foot and the 4-foot fence styles?
Yeah, I think when we use the term privacy fence, that's what's been requested. That's typically what we're referring to. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Do any of the commissioners feel strongly about the height of the fence and like the primacy of Southwest versus Cedar Place and the road frontage situation?
I'm set. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I don't have a problem with the 4 foot. I think, you know, there's so much shrubbery around that lot that you're almost not even aware that there's that much space in there on it.
Yeah, I definitely wasn't prior to this discussion.
Yeah, and I've kind of been there, but never really thought about how much it was. I do like the 6 foot along Cedar Place. I think, you know, I know we're concerned somewhat with public view and community connections and whatever. But I also think that street, particularly that block along there, or that part of the Cedar Place, having that 6 foot in there does provide some privacy for them.
Yeah.
And I think that would be, to me, that would be an important consideration.
Yeah, I think that's very reasonable.
You know,
Yeah, and I agree as well. I think the 6 feet along Cedar Place, I just, maybe, even with that, that large vehicle gate we were discussing, even if that were 4 feet, I guess I would be okay with that as well. But, I would just maybe want to just, put that to the owner as to consider making that a little bit higher. I don't necessarily see it. I wouldn't necessarily push that to be a requirement, though. I think that just it's just a judgment call there. But I can see it either way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even with the 4 foot in the front, you have that embankment there that slopes up.
Yeah, no, that definitely helps.
There's that one view where you're walking down Southwest or coming down Southwest, and you kind of see through the corner there. A 4 foot fence is going to fill that and be up that's about a 3 or 4 foot bank there. So the top of that fence is going to be 7, 8 feet above the sidewalk.
Yeah, I think at this time I feel comfortable moving forward with the motion if y'all do.
Well, I'm willing to make a motion that we approve this.
I'll second.
Wonderful. We have a motion and a second. Ms. Lawrence,
is the motion to approve as presented?
I believe so. My understanding.
That would be my intent, yes.
So that'd be 4 feet then?
4 foot on Southwest, 4 foot in the corner facing Cedar Place, as shown in red.
Right.
6 foot everywhere else.
Yep. Yes.
And a pool.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Ms. Lawrence, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, who made the second? I'm sorry, I missed that.
I did.
Jay,
Oh,
Commissioner
gotcha.
McCusker.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner Forsythe,
Yes, yes.
Vice Chairman Hunter,
Yes.
Commissioner McCusker,
Yes.
Commissioner Toole,
Yes.
Commissioner Whitfield,
Yes.
and Chairman Brand.
Yes.
All right, motion approved as presented.
Thanks, Luther.
Wonderful.
Thanks, gentlemen, for calling in.
Thank you. Thank you all.
All right, wonderful. So next up, we have the Gold Cross Tattoo sign.
Yes.
Matt, you want to take it away for us?
214 East Main Street. This is a really straightforward projecting sign, meets all the requirements of the design guidelines. It would be double face Cinnabon, which is the metal face sign with the 2-inch square tubing. It qualifies as a secondary sign. So there's some discussion of facade renovations on this building. And so they want to be able to have a sign that can be taken down for those renovations. And then at a later date, they could consider a more primary signage and then have this as secondary to that principal signage. So I think it's a good approach, and staff is good with this and recommends approval.
Wonderful. Yeah, after looking over this, I feel very comfortable. I would love to hear my other commissioners' thoughts, and then we can open it up just briefly, and then we can open it up for public hearing. Do you guys have any thoughts on this?
Feel good about it.
Feel good about it? Reminds me a lot of the barley water sign.
Yeah, it looks
Right.
fine.
It's based on the same design.
It looks
Yeah.
fine, Nathan.
I was just
Looks
curious
good.
if this sign would be lit in any way.
Not at this time. There's no proposal for that.
Okay.
Yeah, I find it very acceptable. I think
Right.
it's well.
Let's go to public hearing and then
Yeah.
do a little more deliberation.
Okay, that sounds good. So we'll go ahead and open it up for the public hearing at this time. If you're following along online, you should be able to see these, see the meeting ID and password for this Zoom conversation. There's also, that's the phone number to call in if you want to call into this meeting. So we'll give you just a moment to do so if you would like to. Otherwise, we're going to close the public hearing. Is there
Is the
anyone that wishes?
sign company here?
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like they got the memo.
That would be Foster Signs.
Foster.
Yes, this is Justin Foster Signs. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah,
Hey,
Justin
yeah,
was
what's
on
up?
earlier. That's right.
How are you, Justin?
Doing great. How are you guys?
I'm good. Do you have anything you'd like to say, or should we move to questions?
Yeah, it's just I heard you all saying, just like barley waters that we've done in the past. Steel bracket with the sign-on composite sign panels. 10-foot clearance from the sidewalk. We went with this, kind of like you said, so we can maybe move it to the left brick column in the future if they redo the building fascia. The tenant of the building is stated he's hoping to buy that building from the owner now in the next 2 to 3 years and maybe remodel that. So we went with something that could be moved.
Wonderful. That's very helpful. Thank you. And commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Nope.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. I'd like to go ahead and close the public hearing at this time, unless there's anyone else that wishes to speak. Seeing as how that does not appear to be the case, we will entertain a motion at this time.
Motion to approve the COA as presented.
Wonderful. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion by Dr. Whitfield and second
That was Wes.
by Commissioner Forsyth.
Yeah.
Ms. Lawrence, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Forsyth,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Hunter,
Yes.
Commissioner McCusker,
Yes.
Commissioner Toole,
Yes.
Commissioner Whitfield,
Yes.
and Chairman Brand.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thanks, Justin, for joining us. The next item for consideration is at 121 North Commerce Street, Unit 102. This is the RS&G Rouge Salon signage. Matt, you want to take this away for us?
Yes, so this is, as we had last month, another business on this block along North Commerce. This is a salon that is located on East Oakland in Johnson City in a strip mall. They're either adding a second location or moving locations. I'm not 100% sure, but they're trying to move the signage from the old location to this location. The current signage as it's configured is very much a strip mall, conventional sign with RS&G is flat metal letters. And then the Rouge sits on a raceway that holds electrical components, and the Rouge is lit in a cabinet box lettering with a plastic face. And so immediately we said, okay, no internal illumination is allowed. So we had a lot of back and forth with the sign company on this one, Foster Signs, and they said, well, we can replace the plastic with metal, and just put a metal Rouge into that box lettering. And so that's what their proposal is: flat black RS&G with box Rouge on top of it. The raceway, the electrical runner would be removed completely, so it would just be flat letters with box letters on top of it, stacked kind of horizontally this way. This is the site. There is a historic sign there, the B&B Produce Company sign, which I'm not sure what the future of that sign is. I do think that needs to be taken into consideration. We have a design guideline that says, we have preservation guidelines in here that I don't have in the presentation. However, I will read that to you. Preserve an historic painted sign or ghost sign where it exists. Ghost sign should be allowed to fade. If an owner wants to restore the sign, that's all ghost signs. It does say signs that are historically important and retain or recreate integrity shall be maintained. And so that's just something to add in there.
Matt, what is the condition of the historic sign?
Right.
Hang on 1 second. Can y'all see my presentation again?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It appears to be in relatively good condition. It's weathered, but it's, I don't know what else to add to that other than it's up.
So behind is the facade, right? The brick?
That's correct.
Okay.
Oh, yeah,
At least that's my understanding.
So it just says hung up there then.
That's right. It's attached to the wall.
But it's stable, there's no concerns about it, its integrity or it potentially falling or anything.
I haven't inspected it to be able to even answer that question.
And there's not a sign panel, is that right?
There is not. I believe it's attached to the brick on top of the brick. It is not a sign panel. It is a sign.
Yeah.
But very unique. Definitely adds a lot of character to this block and is a nod to the kind of historic uses that were on this block. Right. It's really the only historic sign still remaining. Definitely worthy part of the conversation. Just moving forward with, we have our design guidelines. The flush mounted wall sign is allowed. The flush mounted is where we got with removing the raceway, as I keep calling it, but I'm not exactly sure what the correct terminology is. But
Matt, they didn't want to incorporate the sign that's up there now in their design.
That was not part of their proposal.
Okay.
Matt,
Yes.
can you clarify for me this? I'm seeing this, the side by side, but I'm also seeing.
So
yeah,
I'm getting there.
Okay. Sorry.
So that's the next slide. So through this discussion, it was, well, they're going to make metal. They're going to cut a metal Rouge out to fit within the box sign. What if they're two separate components, what if they were laid out horizontally instead of stacked vertically? Because that would be more in line with what we see around the district. And so I asked them, this is not their proposal, but I asked them to lay that out and see what it would look like. So it comes back at 48 and a half square feet, which is substantially larger than the original proposal because it doesn't overlap at all. But then, it dawned on me, well, if they're cutting out the Rouge in metal to put into the cabinet or into a box lettering system, do they even need the box at all? What if this was just a flat sign, flat RS&G, flat Rouge, and it was mounted on the wall horizontally? And if they're going to fabricate this out of metal, why not just reduce it down? It doesn't have to be the size of the box lettering anymore if the box is going to be not included. And so kind of going down this path, and none of this is costing them any extra money, maybe saving them money. So I'm trying to go with some ideas that allow a new business to come into downtown to use an old sign or most of the components of an old sign without, a heavy burden of extra costs for signage, but find a way to make that work in the historic district. And so what I've basically come up with is a proposal to have Rouge manufactured out of metal, but reduced down in size so it fits more within the size of the RS&G. That would reduce the overall square footage footprint. It would have the option of putting it within a sign panel, just as an idea. You could even do something different in the background of the sign panel. Excuse my terrible graphic skills, which I have zero of. This is just me kind of playing around with some ideas to try and get, a cost-effective proposal that would be in line with the historic district. So this is all kind of alternatives or modifications that I'm proposing to be considered by the commission, as well, or in addition to the issue with that we have a historic sign sitting there in the same exact location.
Have you
there was some
proposed
conversation about somehow incorporating this existing signage into a projecting sign so that one sign could possibly stay and you could have a projecting sign maybe above it or to the side. But really it all hinges on the fact that they're trying to relocate a sign from somewhere else. How do we work within those parameters?
Have you proposed this to them, Matt?
There's been some discussion. The reduce, it's all been kind of communicated through
because
email.
Just personally, I think that Rouge on top of the RS&G is too busy. It kind of, I don't know. I just think it's a little busy. I like your plan better.
So Matt, if we were to approve the current slide that's in front of us here, that would be acceptable to them.
So there's two different ways of looking at this. One is that it is box lettering. I did not include this in my slide. Y'all have pictures of the actual sign, right? That I took out at the current location.
Yeah.
I forgot to put those pictures in here, but you understand the box lettering. So they basically are saying, all right, we're going to take the acrylic out. We're going to put metal into that box, and we would have RS&G and then box lettering Rouge either on top of it. This is one way to look at that is you just take that box lettering and shift it over to the right. Another idea is you take it out of the box lettering and shift it over to the right, and they both sit flat.
Right.
And then the next step is, well, if you're going to manufacture something and it's going to lay flat, then it doesn't have to be the same size as the box lettering. It could be reduced down to work horizontally.
Right.
When you take it from vertical to horizontal in its current size, it doesn't work as well. The Rouge is a little overpowering, but if you reduce it down, it's a little more complementary.
Okay. This
is messing with their logo. This is messing with their, this is a business and what they're trying to do. So we kind of ride this tightrope. But we're looking out for the district and what we think is appropriate, especially when you're talking about moving something from a strip mall location, which is, really, the contrary in a lot of ways to what we're trying to create in downtown.
Yeah, but they understand that, that they won't be putting up any part of the illumination and that it needs to be flat, right? They understand that no illumination is going to
well, no internal illumination.
Internal, right.
And that it would have to be flush mounted.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. So then my other question is regarding the window signage that you in the packet. And I was wondering. Yeah.
You're talking about on the
windows, the decals.
That's temporary. That's just temporary as they're that.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
so that's just okay.
So it's temporary, kind of like instead of a temporary banner, they did temporary window signage.
Okay.
They put this up. We told them, hey, you've covered too much window. Take half of it down. They did. Right. They complied. So that does not exist today. And when it opens in late 2020, it's all coming down.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay.
Right,
So that helps. Okay. Well, do we have any questions or comments before we open it up to the public hearing?
I guess that I have a concern about the fate of the historic sign, just given that we have pretty specific language about preserving that. And if it is in decent shape and its integrity isn't in question, then I think that any signage plan that we approve should have a plan for that sign. So that's just a thought, going through the guidelines and seeing that and realizing it kind of complicates things, but it's also, one of the historic features that we need to consider.
I have to take some responsibility in not highlighting that better. I've worked directly with the sign company, not the applicant. I haven't spoken to the applicant at all. And so we talked about the sign and the fabrication of the sign. And so I take a lot of responsibility for that. I should have communicated with the applicant that there was an issue there. But I didn't see a whole lot of workaround if they wanted to use an existing sign, how else to really do it. But I hear your concern, and I think that's something we may want to ask, talk about in the public hearing, and then it needs to be deliberated on.
How much smaller would the sign be, Matt, if you did incorporate it with the original one?
I don't have an exact number. That's not my. I'm very much like stretching my ability to try and illustrate something for you, but.
Is this a Greg Cox owned building?
It is.
Okay. Okay. Is it, I think for me, the last thing I guess I would say before we get into the public hearing is that I definitely think it's really important to preserve this sign. The only question that I have is I'm not sure how it would be incorporated into, seems like a complex process to incorporate this B&B produce sign into the new business that's trying to come here. It seems a little thornier than we can address fully tonight. So that's just something on my mind. So we should keep that in mind as we go into the public hearing, which I would like to do now. So you can see on the screen here, it's broadcasting live if you'd like to call in. We have a number there. We have a meeting ID and a password number for you to join if you'd like to. That being said, is the applicant here? Anyone from the sign company here?
Ryan or Adam?
I don't have anyone.
Okay.
Nobody? Okay, cool. Okay, so is there anyone at all from the public that would like to speak regarding this matter at this time before we close the public hearing?
I have no one on the line.
I don't have.
All right. Okay, well, in that case, the public hearing is closed, and let's enter into some discussion. I think for me, including the old sign in the new signage seems very prudent and within the municipality's best interest. However, that seems, and I would like to recommend that this go to the design review committee.
I would agree with that.
You'd agree with that? Okay.
Pretty clear there.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I think there's some options. I'm a little concerned how you can put incorporate the current design for this business into that sign and make it work in any kind of an appeal.
Yeah.
We had talked about doing it some type of projecting sign. If it was cut out of metal, but the double facing is where it gets difficult because the letters wouldn't match up.
Yeah, but you could do it maybe in reverse, although the size of the block letters makes it a bit difficult, but there's probably some compromise there where you know, like, I think it's, Yeehaw has the big metal panel, but then the letters are cut out from that. There's a number of ways you could get there that I think maybe need to be explored.
Yeah, I agree with that proposal for the design review committee to come up with something. And, we can do our best to try and limit the cost burden, but at some point, we've got to, stand up for the district as well. And so,
yeah, absolutely.
I think we had this conversation during our last meeting, but unfortunately, when folks do identify these sites as places that they want to put their businesses in, it comes with some of these additional considerations. So we don't want to add hardship, but it is kind of par for the course.
Yeah. Matt, do you know what the approximate schedule is other than late 2020? That if this got pushed back by a month or two to go through the process and really think about these issues, that they would, that their schedule might be impacted?
I don't. I have not gotten any sense of urgency. It also would need approval, just like the Go Burrito last month, for historic tax credits. And so the property owner would have to give final approval. He would have to, kind of get some feedback from the folks who run that program. And so there's some other steps that have to be considered. And I think going with the design review committee is probably the best way to go to get the best result possible. The historic tax credits may not want that sign moved.
Matt, I have Doug Carroll on the phone. Is this?
He's not for this item.
He's for the next
thank
one.
you.
Yeah, thank you.
So do we need a motion?
Yes.
We do.
Can I make a motion to table this at the moment and send it to the design review committee? For
the terminology would be defer, not table. But yes.
Thinking of poker. So I amend the motion to defer.
Nicole was going to call you out if I didn't. So
That's fine. That's fine.
I'll second that.
All right, that's a second from Dr. Whitfield. We have a motion and a second. Ms. Lawrence, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Forsyth,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Hunter,
Yes.
Commissioner McCusker,
Yes.
Commissioner Toole,
Yes.
Commissioner Whitfield,
Yes.
and Chairman Brand.
Yes.
Motion to defer and to be heard before the design review committee is approved.
Wonderful. Thanks very much. All right, it looks like the next item on the agenda is regarding. Please.
Can I propose a 3-minute break?
Oh, let's do it. 3-minute break.
Before we get into the second half of this meeting.
Absolutely.
Good.
Wonderful.
All right, be right back.
3-minute break. Hey there. Can y'all hear me?
Yes,
All right, we ready to start back?
I'm ready.
Ready?
All right, let's do it.
Yep.
So once again, this is the Go Burrito signage, 121 North Commerce Street, Unit 104. Matt, you want to take it away for us?
Yes, I am. We've had, are y'all still seeing my screen here? What is going on? Screen stop sharing. Start sharing. We've had so many iterations that I had one 5 minutes before this meeting started, so what my presentation is not up to date. So I'm just going to go off the PDFs that we that are received, and then we'll jump back into the PowerPoint and kind of look at some of the past iterations, look at some of the discussion that's been going on between Denise Hensley and I, the representative from Snyder Signs, and kind of where we've landed. And so the latest is a projecting sign, as you can see, centered on the building face, halfway between the top of the building and the top of the garage doors. 16.5 square feet, so well under the 32 square feet. And then it includes some secondary wall signage above the garage door. Now this material is proposed to be lit, and this is a push-through acrylic, and it's basically meant to mimic neon. Neon is rarely used and is not really a viable modern light solution to my understanding. And so they've proposed to go with a internally lit but neon-esque sign. And then, oh, I'm having some PDF issues here. Not sure what's going on. Oof, it is not happy. I've got most of this in the PowerPoint, so we'll go back to that. It was working better. Okay, so this version doesn't show that there's some slight modifications. The sign has been lifted up, but this kind of shows you the progression of our conversation. But so this originally they had the sign down here. They've moved it up. These secondary wall sign is shifted a little bit towards the center in the last iteration. But essentially, you know, this is something that they're proposing, is to have the secondary wall sign painted above the garage door, and that it would be lit through a neon-esque lighting system. So this kind of shows you what that's going to look like. The PDF showed the various colors, and I'll let them speak to that, but it had LED lights in the background, so it would shine through different kind of bright colors. I think it was green and blue and maybe another color in addition to the white. And so I'll let them kind of speak to how that lighting works. This is kind of a later addition to the proposal. And then they also kind of, as a backup plan, have another alternative for the secondary signage to be along the left column. It would not stick up above the garage door as is kind of shown on the 3D version on the left, but it would be, you know, pretty much even with the top of the garage door, and would fit in between the gas line and the top of the garage door, and would be secondary signage. They had proposed aluminum, but we've also had conversations about paint as an option for that. And so you're looking at a proposal for a projecting sign that has push-through acrylic mimicking neon, and you're looking at a secondary sign, wall sign that has two options. One, painting Go Burrito Social Spirits above the top of the garage door, or painting or aluminum or high-density urethane, some material of signage going down the left column as an alternative.
Well, before we even jump in, I want to thank you, Matt, for working with this applicant and with the sign designer. I know that it's been a long process, but your all's collaboration really shows. So thank you all for putting in the time to do that.
That is appreciated. We've gone around and around. This is some other iterations that kind of came through as part of the process. With, you know, a really large secondary sign that it exceeded the allowable square footage. But so I've kind of was pushing them to, rather than just kind of throwing stuff up there, you know, that may be not complementary to one another or distracting from one another. Our design guidelines say that projecting signs should not obscure wall signs. We need to complement the architecture. And so another idea that I had presented was just doing a solid, was moving the projecting sign up, which they've done, and maybe doing a solid band above the door as a background color. Now, again, my graphic skills are horrendous, but that would be the same color as the background of the other signage. And so this was an idea that was thrown around as well, just to add some more context and kind of piggyback off of the architecture of the building. Some of the key things when you look at the projecting sign, it is, you know, is preferred. It is shall be carefully designed to reflect the character of the building, be compatible with adjacent signage. Should be positioned where it will not damage or visually intrude upon architectural details. Should be placed where it will not obscure a wall sign. A large projecting sign shall be mounted higher and centered on the facade or positioned at a corner, not to exceed 32 square feet. And so, you know, I think we've gotten there with this latest round. The lighting, we have neon and other tubular illumination may be considered. So I would, you know, I would say that what they've proposed, from what I can tell, they use some other examples, which I can try to pull up that from other signs where they've used this, and it does look like neon, as long as the colors are correct. I'll try and pull the PDF up again real quick, see if it works better this time. Oh, it ain't happy. Let me see here. Oh, it's not wanting to share. So can y'all see the different colors? Blue, green, and the white?
Yep.
Okay. So it gives you an idea of what, they're aiming for. I'll let them kind of speak to that. This is with taking the sign band idea and incorporating that. It's a little bit different than what I had proposed, which was to continue up the garage door width and go up about a foot. This is at 17 inches, almost 18 inches tall. That's a little bit higher than what I had in mind. And then without the sign band, you're looking at 10-inch tall letters. Again, these are pushed in a little bit closer to the center of the wall than center of the structure, as opposed to what was on the presentation. And I have seen that, going from one view to the next, there does seem to be, like, that looks a lot smaller in scale, but than that does. And we've been back and forth on these illustrations and trying to get them to make sure they look the same in both angles. So that is one option. They did present this as well with the side secondary wall signage on the side. Can you see this? Am I still sharing?
Yep, you're fine.
Okay. So again, shifted up the projecting sign taller, put a secondary sign here on the left. The thought behind that is that, traditional window signage is not an option because their storefront is recessed. Projecting sign, well, they're already doing a projecting sign as their primary signage. So the really only option they have left is this wall signage. And that's why we went back and revised the design guidelines for circumstances like this to allow for wall signage as a secondary sign. And I think, this is a creative placement, is visible at pedestrian level, puts it right down for folks, and visible from the park. And so that is an option as well. But I think overall, I'm going to go back to the presentation now. I think overall we've come a long way with the design, and I think they've done a good job when you shifting up the sign. And I really prefer this layout of the secondary signage. If there's not going to be a sign band, I think kind of a little bit further spread out. With this, again, the projecting signs shifted up so it's not overly busy and kind of working against each other. When you move the sign up, then it gets it out of the way. Down there at the bottom, that's definitely going to be visible from the park. It's got that painted kind of historic feel. I think it complements the architecture by kind of sitting on top of the opening of the garage door there. So I am good with option one as it's shown here, but with the projecting sign up higher. And so with the lighting, I probably would like to see a little bit more examples and understand what the material is going to look like when it's not lit, and that the rest of the sign, the rest of the metal, just get some other examples of that, and then I would feel a little bit better about that. But overall, from what I've seen, I'm good with it. I think it will. It's basically a replica using modern materials to replicate the feel of an old sign. I think that's what they're going for. I think that's what they've, I think that's what they'll accomplish. And I think that's what they were aiming for, and what they've worked hard to try and do to accommodate the needs of the Historic Zoning Commission. So with that, I'll end my presentation and recommend approval with these modifications, and turn it over to y'all for any questions and public hearing.
I have a question. Is this particular brick considered historic brick?
I don't know the age of this. I would say it probably is. That it doesn't appear to be, it doesn't seem to have the same characteristics as some historic brick, but let me see if I can check the date.
Because it could be more from the 30s maybe, or something like that.
Yeah, well, anything kind of pre-1930, that's when
Excuse
they.
me, Matt.
Yes.
Can you make sure that the host has let Doug in? I'm not sure.
Yeah, he's in.
Okay, good.
Anyone from the design committee want to speak on this?
Well, it has come a long way from the design committee, but they definitely weighed in and gave a lot of good feedback. So yeah, this says 1945. So definitely after the change in the concrete mortar. And so, painting on it would not be too much of a concern.
Okay. Yeah. So that was, yeah, thank you for taking it where I was going to go. I think I agree. If you could put the screen share back.
Yep. So this is the kind of the latest one.
Yeah. I think that with a couple just more of confirmation, I think that first we would need to confirm that the sign would be centered between the two windows.
Yes.
And then we would need to establish a relationship in the elevation of the sign to either the windows or the overall vertical section of brick from the big portal opening up to the cornice. So it's either centered or in this case, it appears that it's centered on the windows. I think in another version, it looked like it was aligned. The top of the sign was aligned with the head of the windows. So as long as we have a clear, right, exactly there.
Yeah, no, that's been a kind of a back and forth throughout the entire, iteration. And you can see all the revisions listed here.
Yeah.
Has been this
almost daily.
This one shows it exactly as I had asked for, that we kind of agreed on. But you go to the 3D version and it's higher or lower.
Mm-hmm.
And so
yeah,
I think if we clearly state it in the motion, then it will be what it needs to be.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions for staff?
Matt, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. I guess I wanted to say, I'm confused because I've been looking at this packet all week and reviewing this and comparing it with the guidelines, and I'm not really seeing anything from the information that I was given in the presentation that I'm looking at right now.
Yeah, so that was basically ongoing revisions that came in after the packet went out to try and get towards a something that would be approvable by the commission. And so, yeah, these were changes that that I basically have been presented with and felt obliged to share with the commission.
Didn't staff want to make it more rectangular rather than have a curve on the top and the bottom?
We had talked about that. I'm just looking through the staff report here. I mean, I think with the lighting is definitely a big change.
When you're ready, Matt, I don't want to butt in, but I do have here in my office an example, an illuminated true example of this product.
Okay. Yeah. You can share that in just a second. Just going to the staff report here, I think we've got a projecting sign about the same size that's, attempting to be centered on the building. We've got a secondary sign on the side here. All they've done is propose secondary signage to be up top, and we worked on that, several revisions of that this week. And then instead of doing a high density urethane with an external lamp, which is shown up here at the top of the sign, they've gone with this proposal for neon. And so again, they're looking at the design guidelines, looking for ways to accommodate their client, and trying to find ways to do both, accommodate the client and accommodate the historic district. And so that's what they've come up with.
Okay, so when I'm looking at this, am I to understand that the projecting sign is the primary sign?
That's correct.
Okay, so in the packet that I was given, I'm looking at the projecting sign as the primary sign, and then this vertical stripe that kind of mimics it, but faces out and is either painted on the brick or is affixed to the brick off
That's
to
correct.
the left here.
That's right.
Okay,
And that
But
is
I'm
that is
also-
option B tonight.
that's option B.
Yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
so option A is what?
Is to have the secondary signage at the top above the door.
Okay, but there were at least two of those options, one with the blue sign band and the other was just the free painted letters.
Yeah,
Is that
those
correct?
were essentially suggestions from staff and other iterations that were discussed.
Okay.
So I'm really just kind of showing you all that as if that was something that you think further accomplishes the intent or fits within the intent of the design guidelines, that I wanted to give you a visual best I could of what that may look like if your reaction to their signage above the door looked like it was out of place and kind of lost and didn't have any context. Then the potential for a sign band may add additional context and be more complementary to the architecture. So just throwing that out as an option. There's a lot of moving parts, and with any master sign plan, you're probably going to have a little bit of that. But this one's really been all over the place. And so, I don't fault anyone for feeling a little disoriented. Especially with this one not being in the presentation and being, a virtual meeting, having to go back and forth. It's not clean.
Yeah, I guess one of my other questions is there a possibility of external illumination on the sign band? Has that been discussed?
That's not been discussed.
Or is the only option that we are looking at right now, option A, is this one that you have on the slide here, the acrylic, the plastic?
Yeah, are y'all looking at the PDF or my presentation?
I'm looking at you.
You're looking at my face.
Yeah. Well, no. I was looking at the presentation. Now I'm looking at your face.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
You had
Okay, there you go.
Are you looking at the nighttime view?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Okay,
that's the only lighting that's been proposed. There's no gooseneck lighting, nothing on the secondary signage.
Right, but in the PDF in the packet that we got, there was an external illumination option, which is option what? What letter option is that? C?
What they've presented as option A and B both include the
neon-esque
lighting, not the external illumination.
Okay.
If you're not okay with push through acrylic because it is plastic and it's not true neon, if you don't feel like that satisfies the design guidelines, then I think what you'll hear from the applicant is then we'll go back to the high density urethane and do external lamps. But what they're trying to do is something that's a little more dynamic than that.
Right.
So I would suggest, I'm happy to answer more questions, but I think you'll get additional information about hearing from the applicant at this point.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well then, yeah, unless the rest of the commissioners object, I'd like to go ahead and open the public hearing at this time.
I think that'd be fine.
Okay. Okay. Wonderful. So, yeah, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing at this time. If you'd like to speak, just please state your name and address for us. And if you're listening in or calling in, please call that number at the bottom of your screen if you'd like to give us your thoughts about this. Otherwise, I would love to hear, I believe the applicant and the applicant's representative are here if you guys want to speak.
Doug, are you on mute?
I'm ready.
Denise, go ahead.
Sorry, yeah. I guess just to kind of explain better of this method, we kind of came up with this method because of an applicant of a sign in Blacksburg, Virginia, who the customer really wanted neon, but the town wouldn't allow it. But the town allowed this because it looks like neon, but it isn't. So I do have, I don't know if you can you see?
Why wouldn't the
neon?
town allow neon?
You could not have any method of, you could not see the method of illumination. So you couldn't have.
The exact opposite of our.
Yeah.
You could not see the method of illumination. Exactly.
Yeah.
That was on Virginia Tech campus.
I just wanted, because you had mentioned like safety concerns and stuff. I just wanted to, I was curious if that was due to safety concerns or aesthetic concerns.
They didn't say. It was just, I think they just didn't want to see the method of illumination.
Gotcha.
So,
Gotcha.
Let me just show you first of all this. I hope that you can see this well enough. This is what we are doing for Jackson Theater in Jonesboro, which we were trying to replicate, and they wanted it replicated of their original sign, which had exposed neon, but we presented this method to them, and they loved it. So this is what we're doing with Jackson Theater. I don't know if you can, if that's looked, it doesn't look red on my screen, but, and I'll try to get in close enough. Sorry, I'm trying to do this. I'm not up there. I don't know if that's helping any or not, but let me unplug it. And just kind of shows you. I'm not sure if you can see that.
I think it's pretty apparent.
Oops.
Yeah.
So this is basically what we are proposing, because it does look just like neon, but it isn't. And so on the sign that we are proposing on the building, as you know, in old neon signs, you would see the letters painted on the metal, and then the neon would just outline that letter on the sign. That's what we're proposing here. So the copy, Go Burrito, would be painted on that metal, and then it would look like there's neon in the one single stroke neon in the middle of each letter. And that's what we tried to do on these drawings. Like the nighttime drawing, you can see the shadow of the painted letter behind, and then the glow of the neon in the center of the letter, which is a thin stroke letter. We prefer the soft white. It would not be a bright white. It would be a soft white, like the standard light bulb, the old light bulb, not something bright like LED.
A more of a warm color?
A warm white, yes, is what we would propose. You had mentioned, Matt, about some other neon colors, so that's why I threw in. There's not really any standard neon color,
right?
Because I looked at some old signs, and there's like every color all over the road. So there's green and blue.
Some mix of gas or something creates the different colors, or
correct. So on this one, though, we would propose a white letter with the white neon look.
So it wouldn't change colors.
Excuse me?
It would not be something that changed colors. It would
no. This would be one solid color, preferably the warm white.
Gotcha. I was just confused. I got you.
No, I just wanted to show you these other options, but we prefer, our first choice would be the white, soft white neon.
Okay.
And the border, we would prefer also to put the border would be neon as well.
Right.
Or I'm calling it neon, but it's not. But so we would prefer, so the neon, the border and the copy in the center would be illuminated.
Can you make the exclamation point flash?
We could, but we
or wave back and forth in neon.
Yeah. So and And then our first choice also for the secondary signage, of course, is for the painted on the brick letters to be above the opening there. And I think we got that because we had, somehow I heard in the last meeting that the painting on the brick is pretty, a little more retro and in keeping with not, you know, with what you're looking for in this downtown area. So that's why we went with the painting on the brick, and we prefer it there as opposed to the one on the side, because we feel like that you would be able to see it better from the park and across the way.
Denise, I'd like to ask a question. Primarily, I guess my concern, particularly with the illumination, if the border, the sign itself, the sign edge is lit and then the letters are lit, but then there's no other illumination on the sign. It was kind of apparent in those nighttime renderings that kind of the name of the establishment kind of gets lost. And it looks like it's really just 3 words rather than simply Go Burrito. Was there ever any discussion about providing some sort of illumination on the palm tree to at least to make that more?
Actually, the palm tree is illuminated as well.
Is it?
Yes.
Can I share my screen again, Wendy?
The palm tree is also pushed through acrylic, but it will have a digital print on the surface, on the first surface to illuminate.
Why do they use the palm tree for the I and not the T?
I have
the
no
exclamation
idea.
That
point.
was my question too.
That's just their logo.
Yeah, because I just wondered why it looks like another T.
Okay. Okay, I guess that makes a little bit more sense, Denise. I guess I was just kind of inferring, and since you hadn't specifically mentioned that the palm tree would be pushed through, it just kind of seemed a little bit darker than the rest. So I just kind of thought.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't make that clear.
No, I mean,
So-
honestly, I think that does help. Otherwise, it would be, the whole point of going to this type of sign was to make sure he has as much visibility down that
Right.
corridor, and not doing something with the palm tree seemed counterproductive to that goal. So I'm glad you guys have addressed that.
So
Yes.
the palm tree would be acrylic.
Yes, it'll be pushed
Okay.
through just like I showed you on the other sign. It's just that instead of it illuminating white, it'll actually have a digital print on it and will illuminate those colors.
Green
The
and
brown and the green.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So we have some things in the design guidelines about. Let me go back to the presentation real quick. Just want to look at our guidelines again. I think so projection signs, they can have visually appealing elements such as shapes, painted or applied letters, 2 or 3 dimensional icons. So I think we're kind of, that's a small element of this. It's not like the entire shape of the sign, but it is something. And I think that plus what we have in the lighting about tubular illumination, I think that they accomplish that much in the same way that when we didn't have high density urethane in our design guidelines, but we allowed wood, and nobody's using wood anymore. They're using high density urethane as a replacement, and it made sense for us to go ahead and start approving that even before we had it in the design guidelines. I think there's probably some other examples too where the materials that are modern and being used to mimic older materials are maybe not explicitly called out in our design guidelines, but they meet the intent. And so that's kind of what I feel about this. I think, we've been talking about neon and how cool it is. And you look at what they've done, on Gay Street in Knoxville with all the neon they have. And We've got a couple of really neat signs like that in Johnson City, but I really feel like this, the size of it, the scale of it, the placement, the effort to push for this, this kind of unique illumination. I think they've really strived hard, and this is not something that's cutting any corners or being, trying to be, super cost effective. They're putting a lot into this, and I think it's something that will set a really good tone for that block. Sets a high bar, and something that everybody can be proud of. I know it's pushing the edges a little bit, and understand, potential reservations that folks may have, because it feels risky. But I think it's a good risk. I think it's kind of risk that's going to pay off for the district, to kind of show that that these guidelines we have work, that this commission works, and we can do things that are innovative and cool, and we're going to see that in our downtown. So
I would honestly agree with, essentially, because I think that this issue regarding, neon replacements would come up sooner or later. And I think that the application of it in this case is actually better as a precedent-setting example than we could have gotten, from another applicant. So I think that, I'm not opposed to proposing, to different solutions, because I think, the reality of neon is it's just no longer considered safe. It's no longer really viable, and it's extremely expensive. So I don't think we're likely to see any true neon show up terribly often anyway, and I think this is a good compromise.
I would agree with that, Jay. I mean, the idea that, we've got this thing about no internally illuminated channel signs, but this is not really a channel sign in that sense. And the fact that we're going to keep it not a bright white, but kind of an off-white or a cream white, that fits into our guidelines, because that's the whole goal of having, our lighting guidelines say that they should be rated between 2,800K and 3,000K. That's kind of the range that we're looking at. 3,000 is pushing it a bit. But if you drop down to the 2,800, it's very much in line with kind of a normal house lamp sort of thing, with that warm white.
Yeah.
Jay, can you, or not Jay, I'm looking at Jay right in the middle of my screen at the house, sorry. Matt, can you go back to the slide that says alternative 1, please?
On the presentation?
On the presentation, yeah. I would agree with the comments of the other commissioners. I think that this is different than what we've looked at, and different isn't necessarily bad. And I think lighting here is especially important. So it seems like there's going to need to be some unique solutions to some of the challenges for that building. I'm fine, honestly, especially because, I think it is a really graphic look. But I'm looking at the historic sign here to the left, the produce sign, and it's kind of grown on me, because essentially what we're seeing is a similar aesthetic. We're seeing a bold pronouncement of the business. We're seeing a field that backs it up. And, the palm tree is a little kitschy, but it's their logo and it's quirky. So, I think it shows a lot of thoughtfulness, and it really has come leaps and bounds from when we first started talking about it. So, I'm looking at that historic sign kind of as the guide, for what kind of signage I expect on the neighboring part. So I think that you all did a good job.
Thank you. And I would like to say one thing too before we go any further is I need to thank Matt immensely for his patience and guidance. We've worked diligently on this all afternoon as well as other days, and I just thank you, Matt, for working with us through this.
You're welcome.
Yep.
Let's hope it works out for you.
Thanks, guys. Does anyone have
Yes.
Does anyone have any other questions for the applicant?
Doug, did you have to add anything? I'm sorry, go ahead. Hal, did you have something?
Oh, yeah, I wasn't sure. I thought somebody else had chimed in too. The only comment, and this is kind of a comment, in looking at the wall signing, which, Go Burrito and the social spirits there, I would like to see that moved up about one course of brick. We've got a course right across the top there that is,
Yeah.
Jay, help me out. My
Yeah.
mind's going blank on what style, what that's like.
Where
Yeah.
it turns.
Yeah.
Right. I'm thinking that if you know, from the bottom course of brick to the underside of the lettering, you probably want the same distance as the height of the lettering. So
Yeah.
if you take it 10 inches from the first course of brick, and then you go 10 inches again for the lettering, I think that would provide a much better rhythm as you drive your eye up the facade. I think that would help a lot.
Yeah.
And I was actually thinking along those same lines as well. I just didn't know if we should, you know, include that later on or not. So I'm glad you thought of it.
So what is that, where, you know, every 10 rows you turn the brick?
The roll-up course?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
So you want to avoid that, is what Hal is saying.
Yeah.
I was pushing them lower, just to that, you know, but I think the moving of the sign, see, I was dealing with the lower sign placement and having issues there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think by shifting the signage up, what I didn't want is for secondary wall sign to end up in the same place as a principal or primary wall sign. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And it needed to be subordinate to the other signage.
Right.
Yeah.
And so scale and placement that's how we ended up with one on the left.
Mm-hmm.
Just trying to get it out, something that's not in the place of a traditional primary sign.
Yeah.
And so the more you shift it up, the more you get into like that typical sign panel location. And so I think that we want to try and avoid shifting it up too high, but I do think we do want to also avoid that architectural detail on the brick.
Yeah, and Matt, you know, the effect here, you know, looking at this image, you're really you're moving it like 3 inches up. All you're doing is just giving it a little more space between the rollout course and the bottom of the brick, so that way it just feels more in.
Yeah.
You know, it just feels more locked in place rather than, you know, we just don't want it to. It is a decal, but you don't want it to feel like a decal.
So how far off of, you want it to be 10 inches off of the top of the garage door?
Honestly, between 8 and 10 would be fine.
Okay.
Really, you don't want to have it right at the mortar bed, just because it doesn't really, you know, the edges can chip. So if you go just a little bit more, that happens to also be the height of the lettering.
I would, I'd be good with 8 inches.
Yeah. Well, I would just want it to be just slightly clear of that row lock or header course there.
Right.
So that's clean.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Denise, I have one more quick question for you. Looking at this image, what is the distance between the exclamation point and the S in social? Looks like it's maybe 16 inches. Do you know
a little less
what that's meant to be?
I do not know what that distance is, but I can have the designer scale that out and send it to everyone. I don't have a.
Okay. Well, where I was going is, in order to make this feel less like something that's, you know, because both of those sections are fairly close together. If you leave the diamond where it is and push everything else out a little bit further, so that way you get a little bit more, just a touch more separation. You know, for instance, maybe the diamond on the left side of Go Burrito starts to align with maybe the center of the window, and then where the door framing returns back.
I hate to do that to you, but I want to go back to the PowerPoint.
Can I interject very quickly for a moment here? I am feeling like this is a long and protracted discussion that would be much better suited to the design review committee. And I honestly don't know what I'm going to be voting on at this point with this discussion. So I know that I'm only one voice, and I'm not trying to dissuade us from continuing down this path. but I feel like we are out of the weeds and into the soil on this. And I would be happy to, I don't know about happy, but I would accept a DRC recommendation as approval. But I'm feeling like we're very close to something really great, but we need more time than this meeting is built to afford to achieve that.
I can make an accommodation to your concerns. We've done this in the past where you approve it in concept, and then the final version takes into account some of these minor details and works with the applicant to make sure that the final approval is basically granted by staff to work out some minor details.
I mean, I would feel that way. I mean, you know, in my opinion, some of these details are not minor, but I think I'm in the minority in that opinion on this. And so I feel, you know,
I agree.
vaguely comfortable.
I guess, Matt, if you can just, you know, there's a lot of variations have been sent around. Which one are we actually voting on this evening? Which one would we be approving?
That's up to you. So what I'm showing right now shows a little bit further spread out version of the secondary wall signage, Go Burrito, Social Spirits. That's why I pulled this up.
Okay.
The difference here is that the placement of the sign is much lower in this version. This was, we'll say this is the morning version. The afternoon version is here, and you'll see that the secondary signage is much closer together above the garage door, but the sign has been shifted up. So those are the key differences between what's in the PowerPoint, what's on the PDF. There was some discussion about shifting that secondary signage, the Go Burrito, Social Spirits, shifting it further apart. And so I wanted to show the earlier iteration, so just so you can get an idea of the you know, what it looks like visually.
Yeah.
Well, unless anyone has any more questions for public for the applicant, I would like to close the public hearing at this time.
Any more
Unless you have more
comments from the public?
questions.
Doug is here. I want to make sure he has an opportunity to speak.
Yeah, certainly.
Doesn't sound like it. Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, the public hearing is now closed. And I guess like my gut is telling me that this has a little bit more than I feel comfortable with just staff approving. And I would if there's a way to take the design review committee's recommendation on after a final meeting with the applicant as acceptable, then that is a motion that I would feel comfortable moving forward with. Otherwise, I'm feeling extremely lost because almost nothing that I spent an entire week reviewing is what I'm being presented. And so it makes me uncomfortable on voting on this, if that makes sense. I would love to hear my other commissioners' thoughts.
Just from a point of order, the design guidelines give authority to be approved by the Historic Zoning Commission or staff. The design review committee explicitly in the bylaws cannot give approval of an item. So that
that's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I see where you're headed. Good suggestion. Just want to make sure we don't step out of bounds.
Sorry, go ahead, Megan.
No, Jay, I was just gonna say, I mean, I know that our calendars are full, but could we just do so that everybody's comfortable, could the DRC meet and converse and then offer a recommendation, and then could we just meet on this one agenda item for final approval?
We could do a special called meeting.
Special called meeting.
I mean, I'm
sorry, I don't want to talk over you, Megan. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. I was just going to say, I really don't want a special call meeting to turn into, you know, multiple items necessarily. I feel like this is a special case that we've been working on. So I'm not looking to maybe have another regular meeting. I just think that this issue seems to dominate and has dominated our regular meeting time. So maybe a DRC meeting with a recommendation and then a one item special meeting for approval.
Absolutely. A special call meeting on Monday, maybe. I mean, something like that. If the other commissioners are amenable, I just don't I think we're on a really great track, and I just feel, but at the same time, I feel very confused. So I would like to, and I bet other people feel that way.
So when are you gonna meet for the design review committee? Before on Friday or?
We would
I
have
mean,
to
whenever
determine that
is-
after the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
right.
Could the DRC members just either email or stick around and just pick a day and time, or I mean, whatever's easiest, but the sooner we can get it knocked out and move forward, that'd be great.
Right.
Well, we
Why
usually
don't
don't
we-
have
why
too
don't-
much struggle with that. We can get that meeting
Yeah.
scheduled.
Can I
Yeah.
make a motion
why
that
don't
we
we-
defer this item until it can be reviewed once more by the design review committee?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Miss Nicole, will you call the roll, please?
Wrong button. There you go. All right. Commissioner Forsyth,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Hunter,
No,
Commissioner McCusker,
Yes.
Commissioner Toole,
Yes.
Commissioner Whitfield,
Yes.
and Chairman Brand.
Yes.
Motion to defer approved.
Okay, I will follow up with the design review committee and the applicant, get this scheduled soon. So we can, and Denise, we will want to be able to, I don't know if you have a designer or someone who can virtual in that can maybe shift some things around visually on the fly, so we can see where different locations and different little elements of the sign can be shifted. But let's try to get that set up for a virtual meeting, hopefully this week, and then a special called meeting at an appropriate time after that.
We can definitely do that. I just need to make sure that I have a specific window of time that he isn't interrupted, and I'll have to meet with him in his office because that's where he's got the software and
Right,
everything. That he
right.
can do that quickly.
Okay. All right, we'll be in touch.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Wonderful. It looks like the next order of business is the new mural at 73 Buffalo Street. Matt?
Let me catch up. Yes, COA 313, 73 Buffalo Street. This is a mural. This was a mural that was had been approved and brought forth by the Public Art Committee, who have been waiting patiently on the call tonight. Appreciate you hanging in there. The location was over beside Wild Wings, and there were some issues with that location. So they've chosen this site at 73 Buffalo as an alternative site for the mural. And I'll let them get into details about the design and the aspects of the actual of the mural itself. But from a Historic Zoning Commission standpoint, we recently established clear design standards and design guidelines. And I think this is a very clear case of a location that meets all the guidelines. Is a big blank wall. So there's not a whole lot to consider as far as architectural features, and it's not that old of a wall relative to the rest of our downtown. So there's not really historic preservation issues to consider. So overall, this is a blank slate, a big open canvas that's designed for a mural. So from a historic standpoint, I think this is great. Location for a mural, really ideal. And just want to show it from different perspectives, what a mural here, what kind of impact that'll have visually on the district. This is the design that was originally approved at the different location, different building shape or wall shape. But so that you can see how this design was incorporated into the other location. I know there's ongoing discussion about some of the final colors and maybe some possibility of wrapping the mural around to the side. I will let Cheyenne and Cole get into those details. But staff recommends approval. And I also, want to turn it over to the Public Art Committee staff and commissioners to provide more detail.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Matt. I just wanted to give a little bit of background on this project. Last fall, the Public Art Committee sent out an RFQ for artists for this project. And after receiving submissions, a mural selection committee selected 3 artists to develop mural proposals. And after reviewing their presentations, artist DOS was chosen as the finalist. The theme for the mural project was bounty, and DOS's design kind of conveys this theme with images that express an appreciation of friendship, togetherness, memories of childhood, and love for the natural environment. Those were the things he was going for in this design. Obviously, the mural will be painted on the wall, and it will include an anti-graffiti coating. The Public Art Committee will work closely with the artist to ensure that all appropriate materials are used. We don't expect any complications. However, DOS is an internationally acclaimed professional artist, and so we think it'll be a very smooth process. There have been, as Matt mentioned, some discussions about the possibility of wrapping the mural onto the adjoining wall to the left there. And that would be kind of in order to include some imagery that was in the original design, but is not in the revision. You'll notice a wagon and some additional flowers to the left there in the original design. We had talked about making space for that on the adjoining wall, plus maybe an animal feature, which is something that's often present in DOS's work. But we are still waiting to hear back from the artist on that. So we are not sure if he's willing or has the time to paint that additional portion. But that is something we're considering. And we're looking at different options for the edge of that portion if he did choose to do it. We've sent Matt a few photos. One, a more wave-like edge, kind of leading from the lower portion of the doors going into that Fountain Square building, and then up to the corner of the other wall. And we've also looked at stair step type edging, and that would kind of mimic what was in the original design that was slated for the space next to Wild Wing Cafe. So that is kind of it in a nutshell. Does anyone have any questions for us?
When you say animal, is he thinking like maybe like a salivating coyote behind the children?
No, we were thinking something a little more tame than that. Like
he often includes animals in his murals, and it was not something we requested the first time around. But if we had this extra room, it would be something peaceful, a bird or a rabbit or a butterfly or something that would be appropriate with small children playing nearby.
Exactly.
I have a question. If you were to wrap this around to the other wall, my understanding is that you would not take up the entire wall. Is that right?
That's right. We are thinking kind of from the door area, the right side of the door, and then kind of angling it up to the top of the building.
Okay. And is there any plan to remove that plant there so to make it possible to paint, or do you know?
We have discussed it, yes, and the thought is that it might have to be, will have to be removed or maybe transplanted, if at all possible, to that left side of the door.
Sure.
If it would survive.
You have to get permission from the owners, right, to do this?
Of the wall, the city does own the wall.
Okay.
And I believe the city maintains the landscaping too.
Right.
I believe they do.
Okay. Interesting. Does anyone have any questions for the applicants?
Not a question. I suppose this would be more for discussion later on, because I just have some concerns about wrapping the mural around the corner.
Yeah.
I have a question about the timeline of the project.
Yes.
So when are you all thinking that Dawes will be able to get started, and how long do you anticipate it'll take to complete the mural?
He is hoping to be here the first few weeks of October, and it would just take a couple of weeks. And that's, pending world health situation, obviously. But he has worked consistently throughout the pandemic, because he works alone. And he's been in San Diego. He just finished a project in Salt Lake City at the International Airport. And he's in Florida doing a project right now. So he hasn't really been deterred by things.
Thank you.
If there are some concerns, Jay, Commissioner McCusker, this is the idea that I had submitted to the Public Art Committee to take into account their architecture and the fenestration and the way that the wall, the places where the wall opens up and the shape of the features on that other wall, and to kind of bring in the stair step that was on the previous wall. And so kind of combining both this architecture and the previous design, this is what I had proposed. The other discussion was to kind of have a wave that went up from the door area, kind of going up towards this corner. And so I didn't know what your concerns were specifically, but I wanted to throw this up there just so you could see it.
Sure. Thank you, Matt.
You're welcome.
Well, my concerns, I just want to start I think the original submission, or I suppose the revised design for this location, including the update to the color scheme, I think really works well. I think it's a pretty good improvement over the earlier draft. I think honestly that the proposal as submitted, I think it has a strength, this singular wall, I think kind of frames the image that the artist wants to provide very well. And I honestly think that beyond any issues you would have with trying to work in to the modern architecture of the other wall, I think that you would kind of lose the strength of the singularity of this image. And it already kind of interacts with the planter, noticing that nothing's really been changed to it, but just the shape of the earth mound that the children are planting the plants into reflects the same shape of the planter itself. And I think that works really well. And I think that simplicity is part of what makes this so strong. I would be concerned that if you extended it around the corner, you would start to lose that simplicity and thus some of that strength.
Yeah,
I think it would just lose the impact.
I'm going to disagree with you, Jay, which I feel like we almost never disagree. This is a historic moment. But I actually like the idea of wrapping around because I find that to be a really dated entryway, architecturally speaking. And it's almost impossible, I think, to integrate it into certain public art elements or design elements, So the stair stepping for me, it helps make the entryway make more sense in a way, and it gives it not a purpose, but for me, I'd like to see it as a continuation of the mural almost, to where the mural is interacting more with the building than just being on the flat wall. I think it would look a little odd to have it just on that one flat wall and not connect it all to the entryway personally. I see the merits of what you're saying completely, and I think it's a great design. So honestly, no matter how it goes up, it's going to be an improvement.
It also carries it over to the end of the planter. So the entire planter would be brought into the mural area. And I think a lot of it has to do with what angle you're looking at it from.
Yeah.
So,
Matt, what is above the tree there? Is that a window there in the corner?
That is a window.
A window. Yeah.
So
Do we have, aren't we supposed to specifically stay away from other architectural elements?
Historic ones, right?
Yeah, I suppose that's a good distinction.
I don't know about.
I read the guidelines.
You can't
I'm wondering if
obscure.
I'd like to close the public comment at this time, and we have any more
Did we open it?
comments or? Well, I guess not. I guess you're sharing your.
That was all kind of, that was kind of
yeah.
staff
Oops.
and,
Okay.
and
Well,
committee.
then I guess I'd like to
presentation.
open the public comment. At
Do
this
we need to
time.
redo that whole discussion?
That's what you meant.
Oh, dear
Open.
God.
Yeah, yeah,
You just said close. You meant open.
yeah, yeah. So if anyone has any thoughts, please give this number a call. Here's your meeting ID, your password, all your tools to get in.
But you still have to get rid of that window though, because isn't the guidelines say you can't put a mural over a window?
No.
Corner?
So it says murals, murals shall not be applied on or obscure architectural features such as windows.
Okay. So you can go around.
Right. I think you can build it. I think you can build a mural into architectural features, complement architectural features, but you can't obscure them and you can't apply it on them.
So you're saying we just don't want another Bud Light billboard downtown?
Right. Murals should not, this is guidelines, should not detract from the architectural character of a building.
Okay.
Murals should not cover features that uniquely or significantly reflect changes to the building's character over time, but they may be used to enhance these features. Murals should not cover building elements that uniquely or significantly reflect the original purpose and or function of the structure. So those last two are really about, where walls have been, or where windows have been enclosed or openings have been enclosed, or certain functions of the building that no longer, you may have a service entryway that's been closed up. You may be able to utilize that in a mural design, but we don't want to lose those elements that kind of tell the story of a building. The story here is pretty short. This building doesn't tell a very, very long story. So, I don't see a lot here with as far as the guideline, what the guidelines were trying to protect. And then I also don't see it explicitly violating any of the design standards when it comes to obscuring windows.
Well,
Can we continue with the public meeting?
No, I'd like to go ahead and close the public hearing at this time, seeing as there's no one that wishes to speak.
Excellent.
And we can enter our final deliberations on this topic.
Okay. I think functionally, I can see, the merits of extending it around the corner, but that's not the proposal in front of us. So I'd like to maybe suggest, could we approve this concept for the mural, this location, but then if they decide they want to wrap it around the corner, that would be a second submission that we would then need to amend the COA.
I am strongly in favor of that.
Yeah,
proposal.
I'm in favor of that too. That's a good idea.
I could go for
I think
that.
that's wise.
Yes.
I actually like the idea of extending it around because as I look at that, I'm going like, it just kind of chops off.
Right.
Weird. And when you look at that whole thing, like that view that you've got up there now, Matt, with when you're down Market Street, you're looking right at the corner. You're not looking at one wall or the other wall. You've got that right in the corner there.
Yeah.
And, I would not want to go with the wave concept. I don't think that I like the stair step because I think that goes better with the architecture.
Yeah.
On there.
Yeah, I think, and not to speak for the artist, but I can see the artist wanting to, if there was any sort of wave motion happening on that edge, it would want to work with the wave design he already has as the background, and trying to send something kind of vertical or diagonal just wouldn't work with the scheme he's already got laid out.
Right. Well, that's true too.
Well,
So
this
I
is
can see the stair
original
step being
design,
worked out.
which has the stair step effect.
Yeah.
And so it's basically carrying that forward. I would like to defer and ask Cole and Cheyenne about timing. I mean, considering what our design guidelines state, what is actually within the purview, is is this brick okay to paint on? Is this wall okay to paint on? It's not about the content or the colors. And so
Right.
I would ask that you know, basically give consideration to a mural extending along to this red line
Right.
in case that's what they end up going with, so they don't have to come back. But I will ask Cheyenne and Cole, is that timeline okay if they were to come back next month? Or are y'all trying to hit before the cold weather and winter and all that kind of stuff to get this done?
I think we're definitely trying to get it up before the weather changes.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I guess how serious is this consideration to extend the mural?
Well, I'm pretty excited about it. You know, we hadn't really thought about it, and Cheyenne and I went down there to do a site visit to kind of see what sort of punch list for public works we needed to put together. And we realized that, you know, if you're standing over at the farmer's market, for example, you wouldn't see the mural. There wouldn't be anything that kind of encourages you to walk that way. And so wrapping it around a bit would sort of make it more visible from a variety of angles, and would, you know, we all really did love the wagon and kind of hated to see that go, and just thought it would be a way to activate that wall too. We of course don't have the budget to do both walls in their entirety, but we can activate that space as well and kind of further put some icing on this rather drab cupcake. So that was just kind of our thinking.
And, you know, I'll just add that, you know, Market Street is running the opposite way. So you wouldn't see it driving down Market Street. It'd be behind you. By pulling it over around this other building, you at least you're able to see it on Buffalo Street, headed east. You'd obviously be able to see it, you know, heading west. Not that this is all designed for cars, but just something to consider traffic circulation and flow. You know, we definitely want to make a statement to all people, whether they're riding a bike or driving a car or walking into downtown. And I think, you know, putting it, you know, having it bleed over to the other wall captures more angles and more viewers.
Yep. Okay, I've got one more question. Has anybody, I'm looking at this image here and I'm seeing at the top of both of those walls some discoloration, which tells me that there's moisture intrusion happening up there. Has anybody looked at what's going on there or confirmed that the wall cavity is dry and can accommodate this mural before we start painting it?
To the best of my
I was
knowledge,
reading that, thinking that same thing, Jay.
yeah, to the best of my knowledge, that has not been looked at yet.
Okay.
But that is something we could consider going forward.
Okay. You know, honestly, I think that's a little bit beyond our scope, but I think it's something you guys might want to look into, because I'm looking at this, that more recent picture, and it looks like it's, you know, not severe, but it's not minimal.
Right.
So, you know, maybe the city knows or the building owner knows how good that flashing is or what the roof is like. I would just hate to see this happen and then in a year it's starting to peel at the top.
I know that's a very important thing to point out, and I really
Or the
hadn't
wall has to come down.
noticed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't
That was a
noticed
great
it in
point.
person, but that's definitely something to check. And that was something that we encountered with the first mural at King Commons, because of course that wall is somewhat freestanding and it is exposed to the elements from the other side.
Yep.
So we definitely had to deal with some moisture issues, and we had to have some repointing done on that wall.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
because
I guess
that wall is another one of those 1970s redevelopment projects.
Urban renewal.
Yeah,
Urban
it's
renewal,
probably-
we could have a similar situation to what we had in the Breezeway.
Yeah. I'm sure they put the same care. So how about, can we put a motion together then that says we can approve the mural as presented and allow it to fill the space up to the red line in this slide? And then if the artist decides, or if the art commission decides not to use that space, then we, you know, there's no harm.
Are you making a motion, or if you ask, are you
Well,
asking?
I'm trying to structure a motion that maybe we can
Sounds like
Yeah, I
make
think
this
you-
fit, you know, that way we can keep the schedule, but not necessarily worry about, having to, reapprove something or
Right.
tie their hands.
Jay, I think that's a reasonable motion to make. I think you should make a motion and see if it passes.
All right, then I'll make a motion that we approve the mural as presented and extend the available wall space to include the portion on the Fountain Place wall to the red line as noted by Mr. Manley.
Seconded.
We have a motion and a second. Shall we call the roll?
Sure. All right. Commissioner Forsyth,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Hunter,
Yes.
Commissioner McCusker,
Yes.
Commissioner Toole,
Yes.
Commissioner Whitfield,
Yes.
and Chairman Brand.
Yes.
Motion approved as stated.
Okay, Chairman Brand, before we move on, I'd just like to make a comment on this. As most of you know, we changed the mural guidelines because a few years ago, we were not permitting basically any murals at all in downtown Johnson City. And I was chairman of the Historic Zoning Commission at that time and one of the main proponents to go that direction. One of the major issues we faced was that historic zoning cannot make subjective decisions as to what the content is. Nothing. It's not available. It's not part of our purview, and we would be opening ourselves to legal issues and court suits and whatever. First Amendment rights, you name it. At that time, it was like the only option we had because there were some people wanting to throw murals all over everything, and we had no idea what those subjects would be. So we put that in place. We've since worked out this arrangement with the Public Art Commission to go through a vetting process, and they select the subjects and they control that. And I'm very happy to see what's happening now. It's not back then like I was totally opposed to murals per se. I've seen a lot of murals in towns and they're great. But I thought we needed to have a better way of determining what went on the walls. So we've acquired that, we've gotten to that, and with the recent changes we've made in this policy, I think we're in a good shape. I just wanted to add that comment.
That's really cool to hear. Thanks, Hal.
This is a great accomplishment. We just, approved the first mural in the historic district. That's a huge deal. That was a lot of work through the years. There is more to this discussion that we could discuss. It's already a long meeting. I don't want to dive into that tonight, but this is a mural that is being funded by the city, advanced by the Public Art Committee. This is not a private business owner with a private money trying to put a mural on his or her building and going to the Public Art Committee for approval. That will be a different animal. And I'll leave it at that for tonight.
Yes.
But we can talk about it another
That will be a different animal.
like a salivating coyote. All right, design. All right, thank you, ladies, for joining us and sitting through all that.
Thank you, Cheyenne. Thank
Good
you,
work.
Cole. Great
Yes,
work.
thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you, guys. We appreciate it.
Okay, so design guideline revisions. These are pretty simple. I'm going to go through these relatively quick. We had talked about the temporary displays. This is mainly about like the idea that JCDA had to do a temporary interactive art feature downtown, and that to be a little more nimble and to kind of capitalize on ideas that are only going to be in place for a little bit, and especially with businesses closing downtown, and how are we going to be able to kind of keep things lively, no events happening downtown. This is just one way that we can at least get staff's eyes on things that are happening and make sure we're looking at things before they go up, but also not completely bogging things down in a bureaucratic process. So I think for to add some flexibility, we're adding some language here for staff to be able to approve certain temporary displays downtown. Any comments on that or questions?
We've talked about this before and I think it's a good idea. So I'm confident, especially, are these the only changes to the language that we're looking at? The
For
timber?
that section, yes. For that concept, yes.
Okay.
I don't have any.
Yeah, I
problem
had
with
some
that. I think
stupid
it's great.
words last time that I've tried to.
Should we add to new structures and major alterations swimming pools, since we've had 2 this year?
This is for downtown.
Oh, downtown, I thought it was 3. Okay, gotcha.
Isn't that a swimming pool in front of the mural? Former swimming pool?
Depends on who you are.
I
Matt,
don't think it holds water anymore, Jay.
Yeah. No, it did. Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's no longer a fountain, but it's still Fountain Square.
Right.
is it too premature to make a motion on this? Do we want to keep talking about it? Because I'm happy to make a
Oh,
motion.
no, I would save the motion for all these revisions.
Yeah, let's do it all at one time.
Okay.
The next one is for materials. These are just some cleaning up, wordsmithing, and trying to incentivize historic materials. We discussed this last time. So I'm proposing to say those materials which are more accurate to historic preservation efforts are incentivized with a 15% increase in square footage allotment. Qualifying materials may include wood, high density urethane, direct to wall painted signs, and some fabricated shaped metal signs. Something we could add to this would be painted metal signs, kind of like what we saw earlier, because that was also a historically, common sign. The final determination of the additional size allowance will be determined by the HCC upon recommendation from the design review committee. So we would want to make sure that it really accomplishes the intent of being something that's really gives a really strong nod to the history of Johnson City, or the historic design of our district, and really reflects the period of influence or period of significance before we would approve that. So there's discretion to it. The 15% is a number. I mean, I don't feel really strongly about that number, but I want to do something to incentivize certain materials over others. Just in like the interactions we've had with sign companies and some of these materials that are, that we're seeing a lot of, and this can certainly come back and be discussed further. It doesn't have to happen tonight, but again, it's an idea. I think we could put it out there, see how it sticks, just like we've done with a lot of these other design guidelines, and try to work towards a better and better results downtown. And then I changed kind of the some of these other things that just didn't make a whole lot of sense, and just changed the layout a little bit.
Okay, Matt, I've got 2 questions here. I guess one, the incentivized with a 15% increase, but that would not allow anybody to exceed the max allowable square footage, correct?
That would bump the max allowable square footage up.
Okay.
So if you're allowed 1.5 square feet, so, and this actually, maybe we should get into the next slide before we finalize this discussion. And just to for instance, the flush mounted wall sign, right now you can have 1.5 square feet per 1 linear foot of width of the building. I'm proposing to reduce that to 1 square foot per 1 linear foot, 1-to-1 ratio. Under the scenario we said, if they used wood as their primary wall sign, etched carved wood, then they would be allowed a 15% increase in that. Would that be 15% increase? Would that be 1.15 square feet per 1 linear feet?
I think so, actually.
Yeah, I think that's what it would be.
Yeah.
So that would exceed the max allowable. But it wouldn't be now the B2 only allows you 2 square feet. So we still they would not be able to exceed the zoning code, but they would be able to exceed what we would typically allow.
But then the commission also has the authority, like we did with Red Maze, where we felt the proportion was way out of scale.
That's correct.
To limit it back. Okay.
Full discretion there. So think about those kind of things in tandem, going from, I did an analysis. Did I not? I did not include those slides. The design review committee was fortunate enough to sit through a presentation of mine. On the wall signage analysis. Here it is. Where I went through and looked at each of the wall signs in our historic district and figured out what their square foot to linear foot ratio was. And so what we ultimately came out with by looking at each of these signs, we started to drill down to an average where the size of the sign in relation to the width of the building or the storefront reveal that on average it was about 0.9 square feet, so under 1 square foot per linear foot. So with that being the average of what we have, recognizing that the numbers coming in on the 1.5 square feet we're seeing things out of scale. I don't want to have to keep fighting. People say, but your design guidelines say you can have 1.5, and we're saying, yeah, but the historic zoning commissioners have discretion and they're not going to go for this because this does not fit. It'd make my job a lot easier if they were limited coming in and we started hitting things right on the head at the first submission instead of these back and forth, go to design review committee, come back, deferred again. That it's Wonderland, where we had 8 meetings on one sign over and over again. We need to try and avoid that. In response to Wonderland, we completely rewrote our sign policy from start to finish. And so now we're seeing certain aspects of those policies aren't working. So we're coming in to revise them. We've done it a few times since the first rewrite. And I think we've made really good changes. The secondary wall sign, for one, that we saw tonight. Another element of this is that, looking at the Crest building, this has, this specific space that's been designated. The signage should be in ratio with this space, not the entire length of the wall. And so that was another thing that we try to write in here. The commission reserves the right, close this, to review the scale and context of proposed signage. This is most commonly when signage is proposed for a secondary facade on corner buildings. Some buildings have a distinct architectural storefront that is much smaller than the full width of the building. In these cases, the architectural storefront should serve as the basis for the width of linear feet.
That's a good point.
Also, with these, the reduction to 1 square foot per linear foot also is maxed at 50 square feet. So that again also touches what Hal brought up, where you had, Red Maze has this really long second facade that was not ever meant to be exposed to the street, but because a building is now gone, it gets exposed. It's really long building, probably 80 something feet long. This caps it at 50 feet at the max, but it still provides that discretion to the commission to say that's still out of scale or not to pedestrian scale for the district.
Matt,
yes.
I know that we brought up that some of the buildings, very few are kind of outliers with this more than 1 square foot metric. So do we agree whether or not they would be grandfathered in, or?
Yeah, they would be grandfathered in.
That'd be
Okay.
grandfathered in.
Okay, great.
There was some things though that you brought up a couple of good points there where we looked at, some language from other places that established when they would lose their non-conforming status.
Mhm.
And I think, we could look at that in the future about saying, if you change out, certain elements, then, you're allowed to do certain amounts of maintenance and replacement, but other, there's a threshold for that where you would have to then become compliant or come back to the historic zone.
I was gonna say, yeah, it sounds like a later revision after we maybe implement this and see how it goes, but
I mean, for the most part, it when you see it. So if somebody says, we're putting up a new sign, and it's completely out of line with the design guidelines, I'm going to say, no, you're coming to Historic Zoning Commission to get approval.
mhm.
So, well, I think we've got that for the most part. We've got that authority and we've got it in place. It would be, you have to be in conformity with the historic district for signs. It's explicitly stated in the zoning code. So I think we're probably in pretty good shape. But yeah, anybody who has one now that's not in line with this would be grandfathered. So with this in mind, you go back to the previous, can y'all see the, nope. Let me try again. So with this in mind, you go back to the incentive, and maybe, maybe we come back and do this on projecting signs too. 32 square feet is huge. The one we looked at for Go Burrito tonight was 16 and a half. Can you imagine if that was 32 square feet? But we also don't want to be so limiting that we don't allow like a super cool, huge Tennessee theater sign, right? So we need some parameters in there, but it could be this issue where we get things that are just not a good fit, and we need that discretion to be able to let people know you're not hitting the mark. But this is one way to kind of incentivize using the right materials to get that extra bump in square footage. And we don't have a ton of wall signs, and we don't get a ton. We get a few, but I don't know how impactful this is going to be as far as incentivizing certain materials. I think we're going to have to look at other sign types as well, and kind of figure out a way to come up with some other angles for incentivizing certain outcomes. We've seen that, our ability to penalize or, force conformity when people do things that are out of line has been very difficult. And so we need to try the carrot rather than the stick.
Right. I'd agree with that, Matt. I like the idea of incentivizing this. One other question I had on here is you've got some fabricated shaped metal signs. What do you mean by some? I mean, that to me is kind of leaving.
Let me see it first.
Okay.
And I'll tell you.
And you're willing to accept that responsibility.
The design review committee accepts that responsibility.
Oh, okay.
Are we waiting, Chairman, are you waiting for a motion at this point?
Well, yeah, my question, I was actually going to ask the question if we were.
We need a public hearing.
Yeah. Well, would we like to vote on this week, or do we want to, was the goal to do it next week? I can't remember how we do changes to things
so
like
this went through design review committee. It was brought up last meeting.
Yeah.
We discussed
well,
it.
Let's move forward on this and you have to have a public hearing, open a public hearing.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, let's do it.
Just so you know, I published the public hearing, so it was publicly noticed. It was published in the paper. We're all good from a legal standpoint.
Okay, cool. Well, let's go ahead and therefore open the public hearing at this time. Seeing as there is no one that wishes to speak, we will go ahead and entertain a motion at this time.
And I'll just say, this was published. I haven't heard any comments on this. This has been on the website, in our agenda packet. And all that stuff. There's no issues for the public on this.
Yeah.
Make a motion to accept the changes.
Excuse me, we need to close public hearing first.
He did.
Oh, did you? I missed that.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
Sorry,
yeah. So, sorry.
sorry.
Fine.
I make a motion to accept the changes to the design or approve the changes to the design review guidelines.
I second.
We have a motion and a second,
Downtown.
Ms. Florence.
The downtown design guidelines.
The downtown design review guidelines, yes.
Ms. Florence, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Forsyth,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Hunter,
Yes,
Commissioner McCusker,
Yes.
Commissioner Tool,
Yes.
Commissioner Whitfield,
Yes.
and Chairman Brand.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Wonderful.
One more item. Just bear with me.
Oops.
That's it.
Oh, that was dirty pool. Dirty.
Oh, that
pool.
was so good. I was gonna freak out.
All right.
You have to
thank
make a,
you
you have to
guys.
make a motion for this?
No.
Yeah, that's
The
amazing.
chairman needs to call the meeting adjourned.
Well, the meeting is now adjourned. Y'all have a good night. I'll see everybody very soon.
Bye, everybody.
thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye,
The
y'all.
motion is everyone getting up out of their chairs.
Yeah.